My name is Dorothea. I'm 67 years old, and to this day, when my phone buzzes at night, my heart still jumps. It's not just an old woman's nerves. Some news arrives in the coldest way possible, and you're never really ready for it, even after waiting your whole life. It was an ordinary Tuesday. I just finished washing the dinner dishes, alone. The way I've been used to for so long I barely remember it being different. I sat down in the old armchair, in the living room, the one that belonged to my husband, God rest him, and turned on the TV, just for company, not really paying attention. The phone buzzed on the side table, family group chat. I almost didn't open it right away. Usually it's just chain messages, food pictures, a cat video, but something made me grab the phone immediately. Maybe it was that mother's instinct that never really switches off, even after decades. I opened WhatsApp. Derrière. A photo. My son, in a grey suit, smiling like a kid who'd just gotten a new bike. Next to him, the woman he'd lived with for more than 15 years, never officially his wife. Not on paper, not to me, wearing a simple white dress. Holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. Below the photo, the caption that stopped my heart cold. We made it official. Husband and wife, for real now LOL. I sat there staring at that for what felt like forever. Could have been 5 seconds, could have been 5 minutes. Time stops when news like that hits you. 15 years. 15 years waiting for that day. And I found out through a photo dropped in a group chat, along with 23 other people, cousins, nephews. Even that distant relative, who only shows up to ask for money on birthdays. I wasn't the first to know. I was just one more name in the group. And that, friends, hurts in a way that's hard to explain unless you've lived it. Let me tell you who I am, because to understand this pain, you need to understand where it comes from. I was raised in life-hurting familjon. A promise is another. And marriage, to me, was both a seal before God and a seal before the law, no middle ground. I married at 20, in church, in a dress my own mother sewed by hand because we couldn't afford a store-bought one. Simple wedding, but complete. On paper and at the altar. I spent 32 years married to my husband until he passed. It had its ups and downs. No marriage is a fairy tale, but it was solid. It had our names on the documents and a blessing at the altar. That's the foundation I raised my only son on. Since he was little, I always told him, son, when you find the right woman, do it the right way. No rush, but when you do it completely. Don't leave it halfway done. He used to laugh at that. Sighed I was old-fashioned. Maybe I am, but values don't expire with time. My husband died when my son had already been 13 years into that relationship, still unmarried on paper. One of the last conversations I had with him, near the end, in the hospital, was exactly about this. Dorothea, he told me, voice already weak, but eyes still steady, if I'm not here to see it, I want you to keep asking our son to do things the right way. Don't give up on that wish. But don't let it consume you either, if it takes longer than you'd like. Live your life, with or without sign paper, those word of weight. Especially since, deep down, I think he already sensed that wish was going to take even longer to come true. And it did. 2 more years passed after his death, completing 15 years of relationship, before that news finally arrived. Cold and impersonal, the way I already told you. I think part of the pain I felt that day also carried the weight of my husband's absence. If he'd been alive, maybe he would have gotten the call. Maybe, even if simply. Without him, it felt like that long-awaited commitment was somehow missing even more weight, more importance. When he met her, more than 15 years ago, I was happy, genuinely, She was always a good-hearted, hard-working woman. The problem was never her as a person. The problem was the years that kept stacking up, while that piece of paper stayed locked in a drawer of promises. Every time I brought it up, the same answer came back. Mom, paper doesn't define love. And I always said the same thing. It doesn't define it, son, but it confirms commitment. He'd laugh. She'd go quiet. And the years kept passing. There was a Christmas, 4 years ago, when I'd had a glass of wine too many and said it out loud at the table. All I want for Christmas is to see you two married on paper. No big party needed. Just sign it. Silence at the table. He just said, Mom, we'll sort it out. Eventually turned into 4 more years. And that's how we got to that Tuesday. The photo arriving cold, through WhatsApp, in a family group chat, with no warning, no phone call, no visit. It took me a few minutes before I could type anything. My hands were shaking. I wrote, God bless you both, my children. That's all I wrote in the group, because I was raised not to air family conflict in public, and WhatsApp, to me, is public. But inside I was in pieces. The comments started rolling in. So beautiful. Finally, LOL. About time. Congrats you two. And not one person mentioned my name. Nobody wrote now, Dorothea, can finally rest. It was like I didn't exist in a moment that, in some way, was also about me. I put the phone down and just stared at nothing for a while. That night, alone in my room, I cried in a way I hadn't cried in years. Not out of anger, out of the bitter aftertaste that comes when something you waited for so long finally arrives, in the worst possible way. The next day my son called, casual as ever, Mom, did you see the photo? Crazy, right? Finally signed the papers. I swallowed the urge to ask, and me? Wasn't I important enough to know before everyone else? I just said, I saw it, son. I'm happy, for you. I hung up the phone and stood there, in the kitchen, thinking about how strange it is to spend your whole life asking for something, and when it finally comes, the joy arrives mixed with an emptiness you never expected to feel. That's when I made a quiet decision. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to make a scene. But I was going to step back, not out of resentment, but because I needed to rediscover worth before continuing to give in touch moment. I was going to live my own life. What I didn't know that day, sitting in that kitchen with my heart in pieces, was that this distance would lead me down a path I never imagined, and that, months later, it would be that very modern, independent couple who would show up at my door, needing me in a way I never expected. A week after that call, I started, slowly, to rebuild my own routine. I didn't announce to anyone that I was stepping back from the family. I just started filling my days with things that were mine, only mine. I went back to my church prayer group on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I reconnected with old friends from my sewing days. I even started taking morning walks with my neighbors, Marlene and Cider, women I hadn't really bothered with in years. And you know what's funny? I started laughing again. I'd forgotten how good it felt to live for myself. I didn't cut my son off completely. I'm a mother that never fully switches off, but I stopped chasing. Stopped calling every single day, and the calls from him got fewer too. That hurt, but it also gave me a clarity I needed. There was one rainy Friday night, weeks into that distance, when I came closest to giving up on any hope of reconciliation altogether. My son sent me a message, not a warm one, not an attempt to reconnect. Just a practical request. Mom, do you still have Grandma's cornmeal cake recipe? A coworker is hosting an event, and I remembered it. I read that message several times, a mix of sadness and indignation building inside me. Month after that cold photo, week of near total silence between. And the first direct message he sent me was asking for a recipe to help a coworker, not to ask how I was doing. I sent him the recipe, politely. But afterward I sat alone in my armchair and cried in a way I hadn't since that very first night. I called Marlene, even though it was already past 10. Marlene, I think I need to accept that my son just doesn't value our relationship the way I'd like anymore. She listened patiently before answering. Dorothea, let me ask you something. Do you think he doesn't love you? Or do you think he's lost, not knowing how to rebuild a bridge he himself, without meaning to, helped break? That question made me think hard. I don't know which it is. But the pain I feel right now doesn't really tell the difference. I know it doesn't, dear. But think about it. People who feel lost, ashamed of their own mistake, usually take a long time to make the first move toward reconciliation, even when they deeply want to. Don't give up yet. Give it more time. That conversation didn't fix everything that night. But it kept me from making any drastic decision based purely on that one moment's emotion. I decided to give it more time, but I also set an internal boundary for myself. I would keep living my life with dignity. Stay open to reconciliation, if it came, but I wouldn't keep hurting myself, waiting actively for a sign that might never come on my timeline. It was during one of those walks that Saida mentioned something that put a flea in my ear. Donna Dorothea, you're lately, ran into her at the market. She looked like she'd slept 3 hours. I pretended it was just casual curiosity, but I filed it away. She mentioned, just joking around, that your son doesn't help much around the house. Saida added, I knew their routine. Both working long hours, him in logistics, her at a clinic. Even before everything happened, I used to notice things when I visited. The sink always full. Clothes piled up waiting to be ironed. The fridge more often empty than full. I never said anything. A mother-in-law who pokes her nose into her married son's house becomes the meddling mother-in-law, and I always hated that label, so I kept it to myself. But deep down routinable. A house doesn't take care of itself. A relationship doesn't survive on equally divided exhaustion without organization, without communication, without real shared responsibility. Week passed. At a family birthday party, I finally saw them together, in person, for the first time in months. They arrived late, visibly stressed. She had that exhausted look only someone who sleeps badly carries. At one point she asked him to grab her a glass of water, and he answered, in a tone I'd never heard him use with her, "Get it yourself. I'm tired too." That cut through me. Not because of the rudeness itself, couples argue, that's normal, but because of the pattern it revealed. Later, I caught her alone for a moment. "How are you two doing, honey?" I asked. She gave a tired smile. The house turned into chaos, honestly. I work all day, come home, and have to cook, do laundry, organize everything. He works hard too, I know, but it feels like it all falls on me. And when I ask for help, it turns into a fight. My heart tightened, not with satisfaction at being right, but with real worry. 3 weeks later, misunderstandings. His voice was different, lower, tense. "Mom, can you come over today? If you can." My heart was already racing. "Did something happen? Are you two okay?" "It's fine, Mom. Just come, we'll talk." I took the bus over, my mind running through every possible scenario. Illness, accident, were they separating? That last thought hurt more than the others. Despite everything, despite the wound of being left out of their wedding, I never once wished for their relationship to fail. I just wanted it done the right way. My daughter-in-law opened the door. And I need to describe what I found, because words barely do it justice. Her hair was a mess, dark circles under her eyes, still in her pajamas at past 10 in the morning. Behind her, I could see the living room, clothes thrown on the couch, dishes piled visible from the front door, takeout containers stacked near an overflowing trash can. Donna Dorothea. Come in, she said, a mix of shame and relief in her voice. Like someone who'd finally given up, pretending everything was fine. The kitchen sink was completely buried under dirty dishes, some with food dried onto them, clearly not from just one day. My son sat on the couch, head down, looking 10 years older than he actually was. It was my daughter-in-law who spoke first, voice breaking. Donna Dorothea, I didn't. We both work all day, and when we get home, nobody has the energy to do anything. Try, I swear, but it's too much from person misunderstandings. Team, help to don't put all blame me. Help when? She shot back, with an irritation that seemed built up over months, maybe years. When I ask 10 times for the same thing, when I cry from exhaustion. What I was watching wasn't just a messy house. It was the result of months, maybe years, of imbalance finally boiling over. My son finally took a breath and looked at me. Mom, the truth is we're close to splitting up over this. It's not about love, it's this exhaustion that never ends. We fight every single day over house stuff. And it's destroying us, close to splitting up, words I never imagined hearing, especially after everything they'd waited and fought for to finally be officially married. And what do you want me to do? I asked, calm but firm. My son hesitated. I think asking cost him his pride, after months of distance, after that whole wedding story. We wanted to know if you could help us organize things here. Just for a while, until we figure out our balance. Cooking, helping with the house. We'll pay you, of course. It's not meant to fret at last, but we'll pay. Bother me more than it helped. Son, I'm not going to charge you anything. But to be honest, you left me out of an important moment. In your life, en stature. A lot. I'm not here to collect on that debt right now, but I need you to understand. A mother's help isn't an outsourced service. It's love. And love, you honor. You don't pay for it. They both went quiet. Then my son said, Mom, you're right. We did everything wrong. We should have called you to come with us to the civil registry. I'm sorry. I accept your apology, I said, softer now. But that's a conversation for another time, calmly, without all this mess around us. Right now, what matters is fixing this situation. I stood up, looked around that chaotic apartment, and made a decision. I'll help, but my way, on my terms. And it's not about money. It's about you to truly learning what it means to take care of a relationship built together someday. I rolled up my sleeves and got started. I asked my daughter-in-law to show me where the cleaning supplies were and went straight to the kitchen, because for me, the kitchen is the heart of a home. If the kitchen is at peace, the whole house can breathe. It took nearly 3 hours to sort that sink out. While we worked, she opened up more. Donna Dorothea, I wanted to invite you to the ceremony too. It was him who decided to do it fast, without telling anyone, because he was scared of dragging it out again. I was just tired of waiting too, so when he finally said let's just get this done, I went along with it without thinking about the consequences. That confession shifted something in me. I'd put almost all the weight of that decision on my son's shoulders. Discovering it had been a rushed decision, not a deliberate act of exclusion, brought me a small but real sense of relief. I also pulled my son into the work. You're going to learn how to iron today, I told him. Mom, I've never ironed in my life. Exactly. Come here. I'll show you. We spent the whole afternoon like that. Me teaching, them learning. Between nervous laughs and a few funny mistakes, he nearly burned a shirt. By the end of that first day, the apartment looked completely different. Clean, organized, smelling like fresh soup simmering on the stove. Over the following weeks, I came by 3 times a week. I taught them simple systems, a fixed shopping list on the fridge door, a weekly task chart, so chores weren't split by old-fashioned gender roles but by actual time available. A Saturday morning grocery routine instead of chaotic last-minute trips. It seems silly, I told them, but you'll see the difference by the end of the month. Weeks later, my son told me, surprised. They'd saved almost enough to start an emergency fund they'd never managed to keep before. I also watched real change happen between them, not just in the chores, but in how they talk to each other. My daughter-in-law told me one day, folding laundry together, before, I expected perfection from him. When he didn't do things exactly like me, I'd just redo it myself, and that only piled more onto me. You taught me that sharing the load means accepting he'll do it differently. Not wrong. We also sat down together one evening and went through their entire pantry and fridge. It turned into a small, eye-opening exercise. We found 3 open jars of the same seasoning. But, on different occasions, all forgotten behind other things. We found enough pasta for a month, bought on sale, but never eaten fast enough, because they simply forgot it was there. Look at this, I told them, laying it all out on the table. This is money thrown away, plain and simple. It's not about suffering to save, it's about knowing what you already have. So you don't buy it twice. We built a simple system together, a fixed list on the fridge door. Updated the moment something ran out, and Saturday mornings reserved for the week's shopping based on that list, instead of scattered, disorganized trips during the week. We also sat down and built a fair chore chart based on actual time available. Not outdated ideas about a woman's job and a man's job, who cooked which days, who did laundry, who handled the cleaning, who managed the bills, all mapped out together, taped to the fridge next to the shopping list. Mom, you should give lectures on this, my son joked, looking at that simple but effective chart. I don't need to lecture, son. I need you to practice it until it becomes natural. No chart needed. 2 weeks in, I found my son washing dishes on his own, without being asked. Look at you, all grown up, I teased. He laughed, a little embarrassed. Mom, I never realized how much this weighed on her, seeing you here, showing me. It opened my eyes to something I think I never wanted to see before. One Sunday, after lunch, my son finally brought up the conversation that had been missing between us. Mom, I need to talk about that day. About the photo. We sat down, just the 2 of us. I think I was ashamed, he admitted. Ashamed of calling and hearing you ask why we waited so long, why we didn't have a party, why we didn't invite you. I thought it'd be easier to just do it fast and tell everyone after. Easier for who? Son. For me. Just for me. I didn't think about how it would hurt you. I was running from my own guilt about waiting so long. That honesty hurt to hear, but it also brought relief. It hadn't been deliberate disrespect. It had been him running from his own insecurity. I accept your apology, I told him, holding his hand. But I also need you to know, these last few weeks, watching you both fight for this, learning to take care of your home and your marriage. That meant more to me than any apology, in words ever could. My daughter-in-law came back from the store right then, and found us both with red eyes. I waved her over. I want to say something to both of you, I began. I spent months hurt, feeling like you didn't value me in the most important moment of your lives. But watching you, these past weeks, rebuilding everything, opening space for me to help and teach, it showed me maybe you needed me in a different way than I imagined. She started crying, not from exhaustion this time, but from real emotion. Donna Dorothea, I'm sorry too. I should have insisted on calling you before anything went to that group chat. I accept your apology too, sweetheart. And I want you to know, you've always been family to me, signed paper or not. The paper just confirmed what was already true. We stood there, the three of us, in a long embrace. The first time in months I felt like a whole family again. Then my son said something that caught me completely off guard. Mom, we want to do something. We talked about it last night. We want to have a small ceremony, just family. Not to redo the paperwork, that's done, but to celebrate the way it should have been celebrated from the start. With you there, beside us, receiving a blessing too, a month later. We held that blessing in my backyard, under the mango tree my husband had planted years ago. Simple, homemade food, borrowed chairs from the church, white tablecloths I'd ironed myself the night before. The pastor gathered everyone in a circle. Today, he said, we're here not to celebrate a wedding that already happened on paper, but something even more important, the renewal of a commitment. Now with the family's full blessing, my son took my hand, eyes already wet. Mom, in front of our whole family, I want to apologize for leaving you out of such an important moment. You taught us the value of doing things the right way, with respect, with love. I failed at that, but you taught us again, the best way possible. I love you, and I promise to make sure you're part of every important moment from now on. My daughter-in-law took my other hand. Donna Dorothea, you became over the remote to me. You became a second mother, in my heart, not just on paper, when it was my turn to speak. I said, I always believed marriage is more than paper, more than a party, more than a pretty photo to post online. Marriage is a daily choice, choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. I waited 15 years to see my son make that choice official, and when it finally happened, I found out in a way that deeply hurt me. But God has a way of turning our pain into purpose, if we let Him. I bless you both. With all my heart, the whole backyard erupted in applause, some crying, some smiling. And my son and daughter-in-law pulled me into a hug right there, under the shade of my husband's mango tree. One of the most beautiful moments of my life. Months later, my daughter-in-law gave me even better news. I was going to be a grandmother. And when the baby girl was born, they named her Dorothea, after the person, they said, who taught them what family really means. Today, my granddaughter is almost a year old, and every Sunday, without fail, we're all together at my house for lunch. My son still splits the housework, without anyone asking. My daughter-in-law is calm, confident, nothing like the exhausted woman I found that Saturday morning. Looking back now, I see that initial pain not as an ending, but as the seed of something far bigger than I could have imagined. If that news had arrived the way I always dreamed, maybe I never would have stepped back. Never would have rediscovered my own worth. And maybe they never would have faced on terrain cracks already quietly forming in their cracks that, left ignored, might have eventually broken that marriage they'd waited so long to make official. I chose to walk through that pain with faith, instead of resentment. And today, harvesting the fruit of that choice, I know with absolute certainty, in my heart, it was worth every tear, every lonely night, every moment of doubt about my own worth as a mother. Because, in the end, that's exactly what makes a real family, not the absence of mistakes or pain. but the genuine willingness to rebuild, together, after every storm life inevitably brings our way.